In we go. In we go. In we go. Okay, let's see. Hopefully we can hear me. We got some goodness today. We got some goodness today. So we're gonna get we're gonna put our deep thinking hats on today. So bear with me. Good, we're live. We are live. Okay, let me move that a tad. Hopefully you can see me a little bit better. Yeah, that's a bit better. Okay. Here are some lyrics which will kind of draw you or ease you into the theme of this live stream. So these lyrics are from the new song "Who Will You Follow" by Evanescence. But even if you're not a fan, you need to listen to these lyrics because they're brilliant. So what have you done to me? You drained the life out of me till I don't know myself. When all your faith in reality fades away, who will you follow? Are we alone now? I can't find the way out. Keep walking the same fever dream. A cure for desire. We're playing with fire. We're drawn to the light. We're broken and blinded by it. We're dying for release. If all this fear was born in my mind, I gave you everything you'll ever be. What have you done to me? You drained the life out of me till I don't know myself. When all your faith in reality fades away, who will you follow then? I feel I feel the changes, the crack in the matrix. Break through the tiles like an axe through the screen. You can't stop desire. We are the fire. Wake up to the madness. The rats in the wall are already coming through. Lift this twisted veil from my eyes forever and ever. What have you done to me? And then it goes back to the chorus again. So that is Who Will You Follow by Evanescence. So I just feel like those lyrics tie into the theme of this song. So, theme of the song, theme of this live stream video. So let me explain a bit more. So from the exact moment that we are born, society hands us an invisible script. We are told to sit still, to follow the rules. Follow the rules. So here is my board. But then there is people like MLK, Martin Luther King. He has his famous speech and his amazing writing, inspiring writing, which kind of woke a lot of people up. But we'll go a bit more into that soon. So where was I? So from a very young age, everybody wants us to follow the rules. They want us to fit into a box, into a category, to fit into a perfect mold of a person of society, or even if it's not a realistic mold, they want us to squeeze into that box anyway. And they don't want us to rock the boat or to rock the box, whatever. So they just want us to sit in that boat, sit in that box, whatever analogy we're going with, and not complain about it. We're conditioned to believe that obedience equals safety, but as we will soon learn, it's not exactly that. That isn't exactly true, is what I'm trying to say. And standing out or saying no makes us difficult or rebellious or dangerous or radicals or simply wrong in the eyes of those who, certain people who are in authority. Okay, so that is the point of where we're going to go with this video. So this video was inspired by Disobedience Day. So 3rd of July is Disobedience Day, and I find it very interesting that Disobedience Day is the day before Independence Day. So I'm guessing that's probably purposeful. But anyhow, let's keep going. I'm just going to take a quick look onto the stream. So let's keep going. Okay. So I have a couple of books here. So there's some amazing quotes from Martin Luther King. So we'll have a quick look at those soon. And there's also the book, The Road Less Traveled, here as well. So I think that it was basically one part in here, but there is some very interesting things in this book. If you ever get the time to, if you ever do find this book, because it's quite an old book, it's from the late 70s. If you ever do find that book, then do have a good read. So it says it's the road less traveled. It's written by M. Scott Peck. It's a new psychology of love, the traditional values, and spiritual growth. So funnily enough, it says a new psychology because it's from the late 70s. It's not exactly new by today's standards. However, M. Scott Peck, he did write a couple of sequels to this book, but he does elaborate on the writings within this book and build upon it, I believe. But we'll get to that, the road less traveled, soon. Okay. The road less traveled. So we had a look at the lyrics for Who Will You Follow? I also want to have a quick look at another Evanescence song. I feel like the lyrics of these Evanescence songs are quite powerful, and I think she's always like tuned into the same sort of frequency of the activists, of the constructive activists like Martin Luther King. That there's that same energy there with songs like Who Will You Follow and Imaginary and Wasted on You. There's a lot of questions that are raised in the lyrics. So if you listen to this, so this song's called Imaginary. So it's from the year 2000, it says. So quite an old one, but an oldie but a goodie. So I linger in the doorway of alarm clock, screaming monsters calling my name. Let me stay where the winds will whisper to me, where the raindrops as they're falling down the story. In my field of paper flowers and candy clouds of lullabies, I lie inside myself for hours and watch my purple sky fly over me. Don't say I'm out of touch with this rampant chaos, your reality. I know well what lies beyond my sleeping refuge. The nightmare I built my own world to escape. And then it goes back into the chorus again. In my field of paper flowers. But I'll skip that part. And then verse 2 is swallowed up in the sound of. So, all right, so it's not verse 2. I think that is kind of like, it's like goes into like the middle 8. So, swallowed up in the sound of my screaming, cannot cease for the fear of silent lies. Oh, how I long for the deep sleep dreaming, the goddess of imaginary light. So that is kind of like a middle 8 part. It's an interesting structure for that song, but it's the lyrics that are important here. And then it goes back into the chorus again. In my field of paper flowers, candy clouds of lullabies, I lie inside myself for hours. So yeah, that is imaginary. So it's just the lyrics. Yeah, I do get an excuse to sing as well, but I really like the lyrics, and I think they're very powerful, and it just tells it. It's just it's highlighting how we can get stuck in our heads sometimes. We can get stuck in ourselves, and there's that whole escapism element where we're wanting to just retreat into ourselves because that is like the safe place. And when the world around us is uncertain, we tend to go inwards. Okay, but yeah, smashing song. Big fan of Evanescence. Their lyrics are very powerful. Okay, so I'm just going to take a quick look on the stream. So yeah, we have that. So this is the structure of more or less. This is a structure of what we're going to be looking at in this video. Jack's Box surprisingly says hi. Hi, Jack's Box. So this is a structure. So we're going to talk about how we can fall into a rut and how we often fall prey to propaganda. Okay. And then I want to talk about change, how we can bring about change, or not how we bring about change, but how change is needed and how we need to switch things up a little bit. And that's to do with positive change, constructive change, and it may call for constructive disobedience. So we'll talk about constructive disobedience. There it is, written down, constructive disobedience. Ooh, that has a nice little ring to it. So to help you memorize it, let's tap it out. Constructive disobedience, constructive disobedience, constructive disobedience. I know I'm a little crazy. Okay. So I've written down here, constructive disobedience is the catalyst for progress. So that is the whole message of this live stream, more or less. So let's have a look at a few of. I've got some brilliant quotes from you. So one of the quotes here is from Banksy. So Banksy, he is an artist who leaves very, very powerful artwork, and he leaves it in the most unexpected places. I believe he recently did one, was it, of about the state in America? I'm sure he recently did a new piece of artwork which relates to the state of America at the moment. But he does leave his works all around the world. I believe there is some in London and other places as well. So this is a quote from him. So it says, the greatest crimes in the world are not committed by people breaking the... All right, so he's saying the greatest crimes in the world are not committed by people breaking the I can't talk properly. By people breaking the rules, but by people who are following the rules. So let that sink in there. So he's pointing out, so if you look back in history, certain things were legal way back when. So such as stuff like slavery, such as certain drugs that are now illegal, like opium and stuff like that. Stuff like that in the past, it was legal, and people didn't think twice about some of these things, like taking people as slaves. So just because something is legal does not necessarily mean that something is moral. So that is the point here. Okay. And I believe a lot of Martin Luther King's work, he emphasizes this as well. Prince says, "Hey man, hey, thank you for tuning in." So let's see. Yeah, let's have a little bit of Martin Luther King. So this is one of the Martin Luther King quotes that I liked in this book of Martin Luther King's quotes. So it says, "Courage faces fear and thereby masters it. Cowardice represses fear and is thereby mastered by it. Courageous men never lose the zest for living, even though their life situation is zestless. Cowardly men, overwhelmed by the uncertainties of life, lose the will to live. We must constantly build dikes of courage to hold back the flood of fear." So that is a powerful message there. And it's basically just a reminder for us that, yeah, when shit hits the fan, when things are overwhelming us, when we don't know how we're going to face a problem, but we don't just bury our heads in the sand. We don't just pretend it's going to go away itself. It's even when you are scared, when you push through it, move forward, when you act, then that is where courage is born. So it doesn't mean that you wasn't afraid of this thing. It doesn't mean that this thing isn't a big problem or overwhelming. But when you act on it, when you move forward, when you just try your best to get through it, this is when you are showing your courage, and everyone can do this. Okay. So there's brilliant books on psychology. So let me have another quick look over here. So personal timeline and disobedient. So what did I? So falling into a rut. So let's talk a little bit about falling into a rut. And propaganda. So what do I mean by propaganda? Propaganda is when literally you see propaganda whenever you go onto social media, whenever you turn on the news, you will see a staggering amount of propaganda everywhere. Propaganda is like a certain narrative or a certain belief that the authorities, those who own the newspaper companies, who own the news channel, that whatever narrative they want you to follow or to believe, they then spread it on these channels because it belongs to them. So they basically everything that comes through those channels is biased by the people who own them, and when they're showing it out, and when people are consuming it, like me and you, like when we consume this, we're consuming the propaganda, because majority of the time it's not the full story that we get. We just get a biased view, and we get this biased story because they want to get you on side. If you knew the full story, then you likely wouldn't have fallen for the propaganda, and you wouldn't have been compliant. So that is the point. That is what propaganda is for. Propaganda is here to make you compliant and to do what they want you to do. Okay. Let's have a look next. Okay, so let's have a look. What else did I write down here? So when you look at obedience and disobedience, it all comes back to taboos. So there's certain taboos that are ingrained in us from a young age. So certain taboos like look left and right when you cross the road. That is it's something that's helpful, but there's sometimes stuff gets passed on to us that isn't helpful, such as prejudices, or any sexism or anything like that, disableism. So all of this stuff may get passed on to us, and it isn't helpful. It gets passed on to us through propaganda, through people who we look up to, like people in our family or friends. So this is it's just a reminder, really, to think for yourself and don't just accept something as truth. Like, and it's interesting, like, that's just reminded me of the whole fact checker thing that you get on social media. Yeah, it is a great idea to fact check some things, and not necessarily, but I would say not necessarily to rely on official fact checkers, but I would do your own research and research in a couple of different reputable websites and do your own fact checking, because like I said, the people who own fact checker, they're like, it's likely the same people who own like the news companies and the news channels. So it's always best, if you're able to do your own research, do your own fact checking, then do that. Okay. So we're talking about propaganda. So propaganda bad, hence the sad face here. Propaganda bad. The eloquent, yeah. Swami on decks, the eloquent yard man. I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. All right. So propaganda. So the next thing on my list was change and switching things up. So when the way that we get stuck in compliance is just when we're going through the motions of things. When you're going through the motions, you have the compliance ingrained in you. So from day to day, you're just going through the same motions, and you've been programmed to comply, to obey. So you've been programmed throughout your whole life, day after day. You've been programmed to act in a certain way, to think in a certain ways as well. So this is why we need to change, do our own rewiring in our brain, and start think for ourselves a lot more, and start switching things up in our routines if we're able to. And this is then going to grant us more freedom, and it's going to open our minds more. Okay. And Bud by Peck says, we was samurai for real. Swami on the deck says, just subscribed, mate. Thank you, Swami. That is great to hear. Thank you. So changing things up, switching things up. So let's have a look. So let's take another look at the other quote from Martin Luther King. So another quote here, which is like supporting this message about not just accepting accepting the propaganda, accepting what the authorities tell you, and thinking for yourself. So new laws are not enough. The emergency we now face is economic, and it is a desperate and worsening situation. For the 35 million poor people in America, there is a kind of a strangulation in the air in our society. It is murder psychologically. To deprive a man of a job or an income, you are in substance saying to that man that he has no right to exist. So this is pointing out the inequalities. And Martin Luther King is obviously also pointing out that everyone deserves to have like the necessary things to succeed and to just simply live your life. So certain things like a job, shelter, clothing, these are basic things that everyone should be entitled to. And Martin Luther King is pointing that out in his writing and his speeches. So hence why I wanted to read that one for you. Okay. So I have another point over here. If I find my pen again. So there's another point over here. So disobedience. So earlier on we had constructive disobedience. That's what it was. We had our own little rhythm going on. Constructive disobedience. Constructive disobedience. Constructive disobedience. Constructive disobedience. So disobedience. What am I meaning by disobedience? What is the whole point? So yeah. So if I'm suggesting that you go against the propaganda, if you start thinking more for yourself, if you disobey when all of your instincts, all of the wiring in your head is telling you to obey the authorities, what will that disobedience actually look like? So what the disobedience will look like is if you're setting boundaries, you're being super careful, super vigilant about what you're consuming. So what you're taking into your head, what's going into your mind, what you're eating, what's going into your body, what you consume, like what are you watching, like what are you consuming on social media, what what news are you watching? Because when you're just watching that, watching the propaganda, watching the news, that is playing with your energetic vibration. And a lot of people may not think that that is going to impact you in any certain way, but it does impact you, and it's purposeful. So the fact that you have very, you have most of the injustices around the world plastered on the news, and it's broadcasted worldwide for everyone to see it. It's purposeful because they want to bring the vibration of everyone down on the planet, because if your vibration is low, then you're less likely to disobey, and you're less likely to sit in your own sovereignty, to take back control of your life, to take back your power, because they don't want the everyday person to have their own personal power and to be thinking for themselves and to have access to psychic abilities. Okay, so this is why disobedience equals self-care, and that's why it's important, because when you're setting boundaries, when you're thinking for yourself, when you're putting in that self-care, then you're beginning this process which ultimately will lead to your sovereignty. And when you're, so little things you can do for self-care and to support this disobedience, so-called disobedience. Little things you can do is, let's have a look. I did write some things down here. So one very basic thing you could do would be the amount of, to really be aware, hyper aware of the amount of time that you're spending on your phone, on social media. Be hyper aware of what you're consuming on social media. So I know if I look at myself and my own uses of social media, I'm a sucker for memes. I really like memes. But if you look at what memes are, memes make you laugh. So laughter is actually raising your vibration. So if you're using social media and your phone in that way, then it's not actually a bad thing. Yeah, it is still a distraction, but at least it's not lowering your vibration. So stuff that's going to make you laugh, as long as it's not something which is like depraved, okay? So if it's something that's funny and it's not depraved, uh, then that's always a good thing. So ways in which we can break the routine and we can disobey the structure that's been set in place for us without our consent. So we can have breaks. So purposefully put breaks where you put down your phone, where maybe you put it in the drawer or you put it in a different room, and you just have a break away from the phone, away from social media, and maybe instead of focusing your attention on the phone or social media, you could then redirect your focus onto something that you really enjoy that isn't social media. Because I know a lot of people would be saying, but I enjoy social media, I like going on social media, but that's not the point. That there needs to be more more to your life. There needs to be more things that stimulate you, inspire you, so you can find inspiration elsewhere. And what do you think people did before social media, before smartphones. Okay, so it's not impossible. So you just need to try it a bit harder if you're one of the person whose phone is glued into your hand all of the time. Try it a bit harder and think of different things that you like doing. Think outside the box. There will be some stuff that you like, whether it's like going to the gym, going for a jog, going for a walk, going swimming. There's so many different hobbies these days. There's even people who take up parkour. There's the way of the rope is a really cool one that's recently caught my attention. I really want to learn way of the rope, but I only have a regular skipping rope, one of the exercise skipping ropes. But the way of the rope looks so cool. If you're looking for a new hobby, then look into it because it's pretty cool. So we're cutting into our regular routine, shaking it up. So we're distancing ourselves away from the propaganda. We're having a break from the news. We're being super vigilant of what we're consuming, taking in. Even so, of course, you can start small. So even if you're doing this, you could maybe start off for maybe an hour a day of having that safe break, and maybe you could then build it up from there. Or if you're more confident in having this break, then you could maybe just go half the day. Or if you're even more confident, then go for the whole day without all of this lower vibrational technology and whatever. So it's another thing we need to be looking into is the boundaries. So I did mention that a bit before, but we need to practice saying no. No, 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 no. like that terrible Megan Trainor song. My name is no, my number is no. That's the only lyrics that I know from that, but you get the picture. No to the no, no, no. But it's get into the habit of saying no more. Practice it, because the boundaries that we have, the boundaries that protect us, and we need to be less guilty about setting boundaries, because the boundaries keep us healthy, they keep us safe, they keep us happy. Okay, and when everyone has healthy boundaries, then everyone can be happy, or at least happier in this modern world that we're in, because I know the world's crazy. Okay, so let's have a look. And another message that I'd written down is, don't, a lot of people, I see it quite a lot. A lot of people are scared of being weird, or they don't want people to label them as a conspiracy theorist or as a weirdo or this, that, and the other. Like, one of the quotes that I really like is like, being normal rather denotes a lack of courage. And it's so freaking true, even if the quote is just from the Practical Magic movie. Being normal rather denotes a lack of courage. And that is just the truth. So for those out there who are aspiring to be normies, to be normal, and are looking for other people who are normal, then that's what it says for you. Okay. But there's a lot of badasses out in the world who are just wanting to change things, wanting to shake shit up, wanting to stand out and inspire. And this is what we need more of. So as I said, there's a brilliant book on psychology called The Road Less Traveled. So it's this book right here. So it's from the late 1970s. So it's a very old book, but that there are updated versions of the book that have been extended by the author. So if you are interested in a good read about psychology, it talks very deeply about psychology, about relationships, about spirituality. So it's quite a well-rounded book. So I would highly recommend it. I've not read the full thing. I think I read maybe the first third of the book because I started reading it when I was a lot younger and it was a bit too wordy for me at the time. But I think now is probably the perfect time for me to read it because I've matured a bit more, and I think the wordiness probably won't bother me as much as it did like when I was probably 16 or something, because that's literally when I started reading it. So yeah, but it is a decent book. Like, one of the most memorable things that I remember from it was he talked a lot about ego boundaries. He talks about when you fall in love, there's when we fall in love, our sort of like bubbles, because we have like our protective bubble around ourselves, but when you fall in love, it's like that bubble doesn't exist. It's like you and the person that you fall in love with are within the same bubble, but then you go further along the line when you're deeper into the relationship, and that bubble pops, and you start noticing that you have a separation, you have two separate identities from that person, and you're no longer in that protective bubble, and the illusion has popped. But that just signals that you need to then start the work to build the relationship. But yeah, it's very interesting stuff. So I would suggest reading it. The Road Less Traveled. One has them. And another quote that I really liked was this quote over here. So the quote by Martin Luther King over here. So one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Okay, so that is literally like what it says on the tin. So this is just a reminder that, like, there are many of us in the world, many of us little small people, who the authorities, the billionaires and whatnots, they think we're insignificant. But the thing is that there's more of us. So we may not have $1 billion in the bank or millions, whatever, but there is a lot more of us in this world. So we just, our number alone, if we banded together, if we were of the same mind, then we would outnumber those billionaires and whatnot. And it's just a reminder, really, that it's like, it goes back to conspiracy theories with like certain families, certain very rich families, billionaires, whatever, who own all of the banks around the world and stuff like that. And these are the same people who have sways over political world leaders as well. So this is why it's important to remember this quote from Martin Luther King, because it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. At some point, just because a thing is legal doesn't mean it's moral. Because at one point in history, slavery was legal, for example, and many other awful things have been legal, like burning men, women, and children for being supposed witches, which was a load of rubbish. Because 9 times out of 10, I don't know, don't know if you're aware of it, but 9 times out of 10, the people that they were burning were not witches. So yeah. So just because something is legal and lawful doesn't mean it's moral and that we should be following it. Okay, so that is just the important message in all of this. So yeah, there's a real danger there of just living with blind compliance, and like I mentioned earlier, that becomes ingrained in us from childhood, and through all of the propaganda that we consume and is pushed onto us, it just gets our brains get rewired into obeying without literally and not thinking before we act. So that is why breaking that routine, rewiring, reprogramming our minds, and this is where like stuff like meditation, yoga. So I know a lot of people would think that this is like fluffy stuff, that's fluffy stuff that is nonsense or not important, but it's quite to the contrary, because this shit is very powerful, like yoga, meditation. Literally, if you look at a lot of the very, very rich companies, they will have programs which support well-being, and they'll support meditation. These very rich companies, they will literally have meditation rooms in them, because they know that meditation, if their employees are doing meditation, it's going to make them more profit because they're going to work better. So that is just something to be aware of. Okay, so let me take a look at the next thing on my list. So some questions. So how do I say no to my boss or family without causing a massive argument? How do you say no when it's in a difficult circumstance like that? So it's just remembering to be polite. Like, yeah, you're saying no, yeah, you need to get the message across, but you can break it to them gently, so that politeness, that gentleness, that will go a long way. Rather, if you go the other side of the coin, if you go in guns blaring, if you go in aggressive, then that's just likely going to create repercussions and just going to backfire on you, because the other person will overreact to what you're trying to tell them. So if you're coming with a peaceful, a gentle energy, then it's more likely to be received in a good way. So it means you need to be firm, but frame it as protecting your energy so you can perform better later. So what's another question is, what's the difference between being productively disobedient and just being reckless or rude? Okay, so it's a very important distinction. Productive disobedience challenges structures that cause stagnation or harm, while still respecting the safety and basic rights of individual people. So it's about intent, breaking a rule to create freedom or change, not to cause chaos. So yeah, it's the intention is very important, no matter like literally anything in life. The intention behind why you're doing a thing is so important, and it will impact on the success and how rewarding something turns out. Because when the intention is good, it's like the law of attraction. If you have good intentions, if you're coming at something with a good energy, with a good mindset, then that is going to be mirrored back to you. That's just the law of attraction. It's just how the universe works. So that is something to be mindful of and to remember. So some people may feel immense guilt whenever they don't do what the other person expects from them. So when you're setting a boundary, some people may feel guilty. So how do you get past that? Okay, so you've got to validate this. You've got to try to feel validated. The conditioned guilt, it's real, all too real for us all. But you've got to start small and practice microdoses of this, microdoses of disobedience. So like starting small, so it's like going back to the no example. So if you're giving little no's, then you can build up to the big no, rather than just going in with the big no right straight away. Yeah, like the big no is being straightforward and honest and getting to the point. But if you do the microdosing, then it's kind of like breaking it to them more gently. So let's see how that works. Okay. So an example is you could like leave an email unread until tomorrow morning. All right, so yeah, so that's like microdosing, like a boundary. It's like it's the same sort of thing as like having a break from social media. So like having a break from reading messages and emails. If you notice that if it's evening in the evening time and you notice that you have emails or messages, especially emails, because emails tend to be less important rather than text messages. I guess sometimes text messages could contain very important information, like from loved ones. But an email, they generally can wait until the morning. So I know some of us don't have that boundary in place. We would see the email come through because likely we have all of our notifications turned on. So when anything comes in from social media, notifications, so and so liked your picture, so and so commented on this, so and so's just sent you an email. So it'll pop up on your phone straight away. And then you will get that urge to open it, to read it, find out what it is, and then to reply to it. But this is the challenge that we're giving you today. It by exercising those disobedience muscles, it's to not read that email straight away, to not reply to it straight away, leave it until the morning, and that is exercising that muscle. And then you're going to get more comfortable with doing this, and from taking breaks from the emails, from taking breaks from social media. The more you exercise that, it'll get easier and it will be for the better. Okay. Okay, so let me have a quick look here. But yeah, it's just also important to just remember that there is such a pressure and a massive weight for us all to conform to societies and to societal pressures, especially with all of the propaganda that I keep mentioning. So literally, no matter where you turn, you're going to see some form of propaganda, whether you're literally just on YouTube and you'll have adverts popping up. So adverts can literally be about absolutely anything. And the majority of the time, the adverts that pop up are adverts of things that you really don't particularly want to see, but somebody's getting paid somewhere, so they're going to show it to you anyway. But so what can you do about it? So it's just about being mindful of what you're consuming and just taking breaks from social media from now and then, and just being mindful. So disobeying your map, the danger of outdated rules. So in the book, The Road Less Travelled, in Peck's most famous concept is that we all navigate life using a mental map created during our childhood. The problem is that the world itself, the world around us, it changes, but we keep blindly following our old map because creating a new one is really hard work. Okay. So Disobedience Day, the Disobedience Day that we're in today, it isn't just about defying other people, it's about defying your own outdated rules. So it's about rewriting that map that we've created. So Peck, M. Scott Peck, he talks about how we cling to old ways of thinking because it's comfortable. Disobedience is the willingness to look at your life map, realize it's all wrong, and have the courage to redraw it, even if it means breaking the rules that you've lived by for decades. So yeah, that is a big thing there. So I don't know about the rest of y'all, but especially when you look at your astrological signs, like I'm a Leo. Leo is a fixed sign. And when you add my tism on top of that, my autism on top of that, things are fixed in place. Things are literally concreted into place. Things are not moving. Things are not changing because that is set. So it isn't easy, but the point is we have to start somewhere. We have to start making those changes, even if it's just little step-by-step changes, doing it bit by bit. Because we can't always cling to the old ways of thinking because it's comfortable. Disobedience is the willingness to look at your life map, realize it's wrong, have the courage to redraw it, even if it means breaking those rules. So it's another important thing is about escaping freedom and reclaiming autonomy. So taking back control of our lives. So in the book, The Road Less Travelled, Peck writes extensively about how human beings are actually terrified of total freedom because freedom requires absolute personal responsibility. So I guess if any of you have seen The Good Place, The Good Place is a really hilarious TV program. So it's on Netflix, but the reason why I bring it up is there is a character in that called Cheetah or Cheetah. Chidi, I believe he is. But he's such a funny character. He likely has some form of autism because whatever he does, he like literally overthinks absolutely everything and anything. And whenever people ask him to make a decision, it takes him like so long because he's just like thinking about what if this happens, what if that happens, and he's just like completely spiraling over making decisions. But I can relate to that because I do that to some degree myself, but maybe not as much as Chidi does, thankfully. And the reason why we do this is because we love rules, because it takes away those choices. It takes away that if there's rules set into place about these things, then we don't have to make those decisions and we don't have to make those difficult choices because it's just set. It's set in stone. That's the way it is. That's the way you follow it through. And it gives us an excuse when things go wrong. So if things have gone wrong, well, I was just following the rules. So why is it hard to disobey? Because obedience is easy. Like following the rules is pretty easy, to be fair. Depending on the rules. If rules are very unreasonable, then it's a bit more difficult. But generally, being obedient is easy. And Peck, in that book, The Road Less Traveled, he argues that many people willingly surrender their freedom to any authority figure, a corporate job, a societal expectations, just to escape the terrifying weight of making their own choices. Choosing to disobey means taking full radical responsibility for your own life. It's stepping out of the passenger seat and taking the wheel. So yeah, it's big decisions. This is why a lot of people just choose not to choose not to think too deeply into things, and just blindly comply with rules and regulations and propaganda. So in the book, Peck defines love as not as a feeling, but as an action and effort, which is interesting. Specifically, he says the greatest gift you can give someone is your undivided attention. In 2006, our devices, our algorithms, they're constantly demanding our attention. So telling us what to look at, what to buy, and what to care about. So this is why when we're giving our attention willingly to someone or to something, then this is showing, this is our form of love, the attention. If you're giving a lot of attention to someone or to something, that undivided attention, then that is a clear sign of love and really caring about a person. So in a world that profits off our distraction, paying attention to our own soul is an act of defiance. So disobeying the constant noise, turning off the notifications, choosing to give your deep, undivided attention to yourself, your loved ones, or your passions is a radical, disobedient act of love. Power to the people. Power to the people. Okay. So let's have a look at next. Let me just take a quick look at the comments. Okay. Okay. So the road less traveled, let's have a look at what other points I wanted to talk about. Setting radical boundaries. So yeah, we talked about setting boundaries. And how disobedience means self-care. So we talked about that a little earlier. So let me see. So we covered quite a lot of ground here. So there's another thing that I wanted to talk about briefly is just like growing up. We're all growing up. So this is like just something to be mindful of, and really just thinking about do we have our roots planted into the to Mother Earth? Are we grounded? Our are the roots that we have stable? Are we firmly set into place? Is the energy reaching down into the Mother Earth, and is it the energy flowing? Are we grounded? A lot of, and it goes back again to some of the narratives that other people put onto us. Sometimes we can be a little too grounded and a little stuck because of the pressures other people have put on us. So there's sometimes people may like injure our inner child by saying stuff like, don't be so naive, or don't be so innocent, or stuff along those lines. And that, like, our that stuff like that, it gives our inner child a hit. It kind of cripples the inner child, and it takes a lot for the inner child to then recover from that sort of criticism and neglect. So maybe that's another thing that we could maybe look into to help take back our power, like healing the inner child work. So shadow work, very important. Inner child work, very important. So let me talk a little bit about how you'd go about that. How would you go about healing the inner child? So the healing the inner child, one of the easiest ways is you could have a little conversation with yourself. So I know if anyone else is around, they may think you're crazy if you're just sat there talking to yourself. So basically, I'll do an example now. So say if I'm worrying about having, because I have to go somewhere tomorrow, and say if I've had a bad experience of going to that place before, then the inner child might be sick. The inner child within us may be thinking, the inner child may think, oh, I really don't want to go. I don't think we should go to such and such a place because last time this bad thing happened. If we go there again, something else bad might happen. And this, when you get that sort of feeling from the inner child, when you're feeling anxious, feeling that anxiety rising up, that is when you then step in and you would then try to reassure yourself. So talk to your inner child like you're talking to a younger brother or a younger sister, and just be gentle, be kind, and put their mind at rest any way you can. So just the debunk the problems that they're raising, really raising when they're unfounded. So let me think how I would do that. So I would then say, hello, inner child. Oh, that sounded very formal. I'll be like, maybe not specifically that, hello, inner child. That sounded very formal, but inner child, I understand that you're feeling very anxious about our plans for tomorrow, about going to this place. I fully understand it. I completely get it. It is a scary prospect. I am not gonna take that away from you. I get it would be scary for you, but I just want you to know that we have things in place. I'm gonna keep us safe. There is everything has been pre-planned, everything is in order, all the plans will run smoothly. There's nothing to worry about. No one's gonna come in and ruin our plans. No one's gonna come in and harm us. Everything will be okay. Don't worry about it. So that is a basic conversation that we could have with our inner child. And it's just about putting the inner child's mind at ease. So it's a very basic way that you can do it. So I know some people may think that that's a bit crazy, but it does work and it is useful, like talking to the inner child, because the inner child is a real part of ourself, and it needs that stimulation, it needs that healing, because we all have past traumas that then show up again in our adult life. Like if you look at the way that we react to love and our partners and loved ones, the traumas that have affected us in our childhood then come back again in our adulthood, in they're shown through our relationship attachment styles. So for example, if you were a child who was abandoned, rejected, then in your adulthood, you may then display a anxious attachment style. So that means that you're waiting on the text. So if you text a partner, for example, and you're literally waiting by the phone, waiting for them to message you back, and if they don't message you back right away, then you're like literally going out your mind thinking, what's happening? Do they not like me anymore? What's going on? Has something happened to them? Is that why they've not messaged me back? I don't understand why they're not messaging me back. Should I call them? This is like the anxious attachment, which runs as ragged. Okay, so Andy Peter says, hi, my name is Ava. Hi, Ava. And Duh says, how old do you think I am? I'm pretty, I think I'm a 10. Rate me. Okay. So that's just a few of the comments. But the inner child work is very important for us. So just take a little bit of time. Another way you could do it, if you don't want to do it in that way that I just showed you, by like having a conversation with the inner child out loud, you could instead write a letter. I've done this before. It is very cathartic, especially if you're talking about a traumatic experience that you've had. Just writing that letter, dear inner child, writing it out, and like really delving deep into the matter, explaining everything fully, how you feel and how things are going to get better. And that really helps to heal our inner child. And it's heal not just the inner child, really. When we heal certain parts of ourselves, it heals the whole. So this is why healing is very important. Okay. So just to have a quick recap. So this video is about, oh, why am I showing the laptop? I meant to show the camera. So the video, it has been about disobedience and how disobedience is not always a bad thing. Because when you're fighting against propaganda, when you're making positive changes, switching things up to break out of the not so helpful cycle that you've gotten yourself into, when you're rewiring your brain. Disobedience, it sounds like a bad word, but actually disobedience can actually look like self-care. Constructive disobedience, constructive disobedience, constructive disobedience. So constructive disobedience is the catalyst for progress. So if you're constructively adding in that self-care, making those positive changes, being the change that you want to see in the world, it always goes back to that, then that is the constructive disobedience, and it's going to bring about progress and a positive change. So in the words of Martin Luther King, I have a dream. It's like, I have a dream that we can band together, we can reclaim our sovereignty, we can live happier lives, and we don't have to sweat the authorities who want to keep us under their thumb. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. So please do check out some of the other videos. Thank you for tuning in. Sending you all brightest blessings. Namaste.